afternoon, everybody. Keith Engel here for TGI Sports Talk. Major League Baseball updated. We're down to the final weekend. I want to thank everybody who's watched us all season long. We'll continue this show, and we'll have some announcements. I've got some announcements coming up as well. We want to welcome everybody watching us today on Let's Talk Sports, obviously, on TGI Sports Talk, my page. Let's Talk Sports, I don't think we're live on right now. We got a little issue with going live on the YouTube page. I don't know what it is. Tanner D is working on it. We do share it to the Let's Talk group page later. Anyway, we're also live on Northeast Streaming Sports and Zodiac. And you can catch us later on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and just in all of the like. Vacation coming up, so this show will be impromptu next week from the deck of a cruise ship, as will the Sunday Stream of Consciousness this week. Don't know what time we'll be on. The next two Sundays will be a little bit problematic with the Sunday Stream of Consciousness, but we will be on, I promise you, if it's from a cruise ship or an airport, whatever it might be. And I'll also try to make my appearances on the Mac and Jack show the next couple of Sundays as well. We're going to probably do some ramping of some time slots and stuff as we move towards winter. I do want to get back to doing my Patriot update, which I have not done in a while. But for today's purposes, we're talking Major League Baseball. Lots going on. We had some clinchers. The Orioles did clinch last night. We still got a race in the American League West. We've got a race for the American League wild card, which pretty much includes, at this point, probably just those teams from the West. We'll take a closer look. I think Toronto's probably set. And we've got a close race in the National League. Tough game for the Marlins the other night, by the way. Coming back, tying the game in the ninth, and then it's suspended. So depending on whether that game's needed or not, they will pick it up where it was suspended with the Marlins taking the lead finally. Could be an important factor in this wild card race. And if it doesn't matter, it won't be picked up and it'll revert to the previous inning and the Marlins will get the loss. But again, tough to have a game suspended this late. And not much said by the Marlins about this. I know they weren't happy at the time. And I know they wanted to complete this game, so we'll talk more about that. We'll get into Curt Schilling still being an idiot. Curt Schilling never changes. Acuna sets a record, 70-40. Little bit of controversy about stopping the game for that milestone. More Angel Hernandez shenanigans with Bryce Harper. We'll get into all of it, and we'll bring up your topics, so feel free to bring up anything you want to talk about today in the world of Major League Baseball. Terry Francona, too, saying goodbye to the Indians fans this past week, is hanging it up. And we'll look at some other manager positions that'll be opening up, potentially opening up. So I'm just looking at an email I had here. So anyway, we'll get into where do we want to start. Let's look at the scoreboard last night. We'll look at all of them. Not all these games are important, but a lot of them are. Let's see. Do we have any day games going on right now, by the way, while we're at it? No, nothing until 6:35. And again, I believe all of the Sunday games, by the way, let me take a quick look. The Sunday games will all be 3 o'clock starts. They try to do that to keep everybody on an even playing field as we head towards the playoffs, or if we had some potential play-in games if they were needed. But let's take a quick look at last night's games. Last night was Thursday, Keith, so let's get there. I'm on the schedule. Oh, man. Anyway, we had a Miguel Cabrera, who still has not quite decided, as far as I know, whether he's coming back next year. He hits his 511 home run last night. Quite a career for Miguel Cabrera, whether he comes back or not. Early in his career, he had some problems with alcohol and whatnot. This has been one of the classier, in my mind, one of the classier players I've watched play over the last couple of decades. In a game that really meant nothing, the Tigers rather, win 8-0. The Yankees still trying to salvage that 30-year streak of plus 500 records, chasing down the Canadians at 39. They have 81 wins. They get shellacked last night as Chris Bassett reaches 200 innings, which is kind of a milestone for him, gets a 16th win. They whitewashed the Yankees 6-0. The Twins, again, Athletics playing out the string here. The Twins are in the playoffs. They've clinched 2-1. The A's win. The A's let me down here late in the season, not pushing for this 221 losses. The Diamondbacks in the middle of a pennant race will play the Astros all weekend, also in the middle of a pennant race, a wild card race, if you will. Astros still with a chance to win their division. They lose to the White Sox. Bad loss last night. I believe they could have clinched with a win, clinched a wild card spot with a win. They lose 3-1. Now they got the Astros coming up. Let's not look for a collapse here, Diamondback fans. Tigers also played we already saw that. What the hell is that up there for? The Brewers win 3-0. Garrett Mitchell returns to their lineup and produces a double, and he walked twice and scored his first big league run since, can't read it. Where is that? I can't tell. Anyway, he's back in the major leagues. It's a nothing game. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. We talked about the Marlins in the suspended game. It will resume if needed, 1:10 p.m. on 10/2, Monday, 10/2. I'm sure the Marlins are hoping this game is not needed. The Red Sox got beat by the Orioles. And we said the Orioles get their 100th victory of the season. Great season for the Orioles. What they've done these last two seasons, to me, should be the blueprint for teams going forward. And hopefully my Yankees follow suit here. The Pirates, Mark Mancini's Pirates, who he's always crowing about and running down to teams like the Dodgers. Mark, it's time for you to and I hate to do this because Mark isn't here to defend himself. We'll get him back on our show. Time for Mr. Mark Mancini to start appreciating good organizations that win year after win, contend year after year. I know you don't like the fact that they won a World Series at 60 games, and you're not the only one. But I would say, you do get on them for not having won a World Series since 1988, but pretty sure the Pirates haven't won one in another 10 years longer than that, 9 years longer than that. Just saying, buddy. You're my buddy. That's why I think I can bust your chops. I know you can take it or you wouldn't dish it out. Kyle Schwarber did homer in this game for the Phillies. Bryce Harper gets ejected, which I want to talk a little bit about as we go through this today, too. Angel Hernandez, every game, he didn't umpire a game for a long while early this year. But every game Angel Hernandez is in, he seems to get into some altercation with a player. Last night it was and again, his calls, he doesn't just miss them. He misses them like he literally can't see. Sorry if I offended any blind people out there. Don't mean to. If you watch this replay, you tell me Bryce Harper swings on this ball last night. Bryce Harper just goes ballistic, and Angel throws him out of the game, and then he throws his helmet into the stands. Angel Hernandez is an embarrassment to the game. If I did my job the way Angel Hernandez does it, I wouldn't have a job. I wouldn't have had a job and he's been here a long time. Are there pictures involved here? My God, he's awful. Watch this call. Please look up you know what? Let me see if I can find it quick. I like to do this every now and again. Let's just see if we can find it real quick. I should have teed this up, but if you didn't see this, it is one of the worst calls of all time. And Angel Hernandez should be in should be just embarrassed with himself here. Let's see if I can find this. Am I going to get the video here? I think I am. Maybe I'm not. Well, anyway, guys, well, maybe we'll try to find it later. I mean, it is just it's atrocious. It's one of the worst calls. I mean, yes, there's been some bad calls. I'm all for the human error aspect, as we know. I'm not crazy about all the AI we want to put into the game and whatnot, taking human element out of umpiring and whatnot. But come on, Angel, get it together, would you, bud? The Braves beat the Cubs 5-3. Matt Olson hits his major league leading 54th home run. Atlanta Brave record, by the way. And look at the Braves have had no shortage of power hitters. You know, Chipper Jones in recent years, Freddie Freeman more recently, going back in the day, Dale Murphy, Bob Horner, Hank Aaron, Orlando Cepeda, Eddie Matthews. He's broken a pretty good record here, so good for him. And by the way, the other day when Acuna stole his 70th base and he became the first player ever to steal 70 and hit 40 home runs, the Braves stopped the game. And the Cubs announcers kind of went off about it, and I kind of agree. It's a great accomplishment. It's no disrespect to Acuna, but we're in the ninth inning of a one-run game, I think. Cubs are fighting for their playoff lives, and they stopped the game, slow down the momentum of the game for that, to show a video montage and give them the base. Do it later. Yeah. Rockies beat the Dodgers 14-5 yesterday. The immortal Brenton Doyle drove in 4 runs in this game. And Ilurias Montero finished a triple shy of hitting for the cycle. The Rangers lose 3-2 to the Mariners. A big series in Seattle this weekend, as the Mariners are still mathematically alive for the division title and still playing for a wild card spot, if not winning the division. And the Rangers still have not locked up this division. They haven't locked up a playoff spot. They could, theoretically, any one of these 3 teams could finish out of the wild card race. Let's take a quick look at that while we're at it, shall we? Looking at the standings, which I must have, of course, gotten rid of because I've been bouncing all over the internet here today trying to find out some news. The Mariners could tie. There's 3 games left, 3 games against the Rangers. They could sweep it, which means a 4-game sweep, and tie for the title. It'd be very hard for the Rangers. Rangers win 1 game, they've wrapped up the wild card. If they win 1 game and the Astros lose 1 game, they've wrapped up the division. I said a couple of weeks ago I thought it would be Astros and Mariners 1-2, and Rangers left out. Rangers have bounced back nicely, which bodes well. They've got some momentum heading into the postseason, unless they should lose it this weekend. The Astros have not played well, have had a much easier schedule. We talked about the schedules last week. They had a much easier schedule the last week, 10 days, and they've gone 4-6 in the last 10 games, you know, with the likes of, I feel, the Royals and the Rockies. Just not a good finish for the Astros. And maybe, just maybe, Dusty Baker doesn't make the playoffs. He may decide to walk away, or they may decide to walk away from him. We'll talk more about some of the managerial stuff going on as well. So very hotly contested race here. So as we said, the Rangers will be playing the Mariners for 3 games, and the Astros will be playing the Diamondbacks, who are also in the heat of a race, which we'll get to here in a second. in the National League. Just going through the rest of the divisions. I said the Orioles clinched the division. They now have a 3-game lead with 3 left, and they hold the tiebreaker, I believe. So they've clinched the division with 100 wins. Tampa Bay could still win 100 if they were to sweep their final 3 games. The Blue Jays, let's see. The Blue Jays hold a 1-game lead over the Astros, a 2-game lead over the Mariners. So, yeah, Toronto's not locked in yet. 1 win, and they're in. And then, so that's your kind of your American League playoff position right now. And we'll come on next week. I'll be on vacation next week, but we'll get into kind of talk about what's going on in the Major League playoffs as we have time. So the Orioles have won that division, will get a bye as they have the best record in the American League and the second best record in baseball. Congratulations to the Orioles. Great job turning this situation around in the last year and a half. In the Central, the Twins had already clinched. They've extended their lead now to 9 games over the Tigers, who have moved into second place. The Guardians, team formerly known as the Indians, I should say, fall into third place. This night for Terry Francona the other night, as he will be walking away from the Guardians after, I think, 11 years. Many years with the Red Sox before then, a couple of World Series victories, some really good seasons with the team formerly known as the Indians, and Terry Francona has done a good job. They did a good job of trying to destroy his reputation on his way out of Boston, but by all accounts, a really good career as a manager, and he's a lifelong baseball guy. Don't forget, Terry Francona played a long time in the minor leagues and a little bit in the major leagues as well, as did his father. So congratulations on your retirement, and congratulations on a great career to Tony Francona. Let me just take a quick look at his numbers here. So he managed, as a player, he played from 81 to 85 with the Expos. He played with the Cubs in 86, the Reds in 87, the Indians in 88, the Brewers in 89 and 90. He took over as manager of the Phillies. I forgot he managed the Phillies from 97 to 2000. He managed the Red Sox for 7 years, won 2 world championships, as we said. And he managed the Indians / team formerly known as the Indians from 2013 until present, so 10 years. Terry Francona had very few years. He had a tough time of it in Philadelphia, didn't do well, never finished above 500, did get another chance 4 years after being fired by the Phillies, and all he did there was, win a World Series in his first season, 2004. Us Yankee fans all remember that. 3-0. Never finished under 500 with the Red Sox, was let go in 2011 after finishing third and winning 90 games. Went immediately to Cleveland. He took a year off, went to Cleveland after that. And this is the second year, he will finish under 500 with the team formerly known as the Indians. And he's been to a World Series with this team. He has taken them to the ALCS. Good career for Terry Francona. So congratulations are in order. And, all our good wishes for Terry Francona. White Sox finishing up an atrocious year. The Royals we all know about. Talked about the West race. Let's get to the National League. All the races are finished, division races. The Braves, 103 wins, a great season. Odds-on favorite heading into the postseason. I'm still banking on my Astros to get some momentum and get to that World Series. We'll see how that goes. Not my Astros, sorry. I'm a Yankee fan. My pick of the Astros. But the Braves are looking really strong. The Phillies getting on a hot streak before the playoffs. 89 wins for them. They'll finish probably with 90-plus wins. The Marlins hanging in there. We'll talk about them in a second. The Mets have played gamely as we finish out the season, but not a good season for them. The Milwaukee Brewers, with all reports saying Craig Counsell will be on his way out. He has no contract. We'll look at some of the managerial situations around baseball before we're done in this hour, hopefully. And if not, we'll certainly do it at a later date, but there'll be more information available at some point. So we still have a race. By the way, out west, the Dodgers obviously have wrapped things up. The Diamondbacks, and somehow the Padres are still alive. Padres are alive only because of that suspended game with the Marlins last night. If that game had been finished, they would have been officially eliminated. So looking at that wild card race in the National League, the Phillies have their spot secure. The Diamondbacks, I believe, will secure their spot with one more victory. That leaves the Marlins, the Cubs, and the Reds all fighting it out, all within a game and a half of each other. The Marlins right now hold that spot. And I did my late season prediction a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about how this would all hash out. I did say the Cubs they were at that time pretty far ahead of falling out of that, maybe three games cushion of not falling out of that last spot. I felt confident they would. I've never liked the way this team was put together. Kudos to having a decent season. But people getting all excited about the Cubs and how they ought to keep this together. Guys, they got 82 wins, not 102. And right now they're a half game behind that last spot. Again, very good chance the Marlins and the Mets will have to play a half inning of baseball on Monday. Who are these teams finish up? We already know that the Diamondbacks finish up with the Diamondbacks. Yeah. Hello, Keith. The Diamondbacks finish up with the Astros. Can I stutter a little bit more in that answer? So the team's alive. St. Louis will host Cincinnati. We talked about that. Where is the Cubs and Milwaukee? Milwaukee's got nothing to play for it. It gives the Cubs a bit of an advantage. And where's that last team? The Marlins are playing. They must be playing the Mets, probably, right? No, they're playing Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh looking to play spoilers. I'll give you some credit, Mark Mancini, if your team knocks the Marlins, who I've liked to get that last spot for quite some time. Not before the season, unfortunately, but since then. So an exciting weekend coming up, man. Here's your matchups and the games that matter tonight. And again, guys, you have topics. Please put them up. Comments on anything we talk about. I've mentioned certain Kurt Schilling's idioticness, Tony Francona's retirement, Acuna's 70-40 accomplishment, the Marlins game suspended last night, Angel Hernandez being a jerk again. All things we can talk about, or anything else you want to get into. And I do want to look a little bit about some managers potentially in limbo as we end this season. And not all of them out of the playoffs, by the way. So in the games that matter, Miami will face Pittsburgh. It'll be Edwin Cabrera against undecided for Pittsburgh. That game doesn't matter. Tampa Bay and Toronto does matter for the Blue Jays. They need, I believe, one victory. They'll wrap up their wild card spot. Aaron Saval against Kikuchi for Toronto. We'll see what happens in that game. Nothing matters there. We'll give you the San Diego starter only because mathematically they're alive because of the Marlins suspended game last night. So Jeffrey Scholes, let me see. Let me put your comment up here. Jeffrey, thanks for tuning in. Haven't seen Jeffrey with us before, but welcome to the show. Still think the Cubs can sneak in a while. Oh, they can. There's certainly no doubt they can't, Jeffrey. My problem, if you're a Cubs fan, where are you from, Jeffrey? Are you a Cubs fan? Are you from Illinois or somewhere else where you be? Again, a lot of Cubs fans around the country. So my problem, I just didn't like the way this team was constructed. Now they battled back. I was surprised what they did or didn't do at the All-Star break. I thought they would trade away players because even if they found a way to sneak in the playoffs, which they still may, only a half game behind Jeffrey. So still, very good chance they could still sneak in. I don't see any scenarios where this team's going to compete with the lack of pitching that they have, and some holes in that lineup in my mind. They've got some good players. We're going to see whether they can hold on to them or not. But I am interested, Jeffrey, if you're a Cubs fan, which I'm guessing you are, and if you're from Illinois, and if you disagree with anything I say, we like that. We like debate on this show. Where was I? I was looking at some of the starters. So you've got Kyle Hendricks tonight, by the way, going against Colin Ray in Milwaukee. Kyle Hendricks, one of the old timers that they've had. This pitching staff, listen, I think what David Ross has done there, Jeffrey, too, has been remarkable. He's done a great job managing this team. This is a very flawed team. I said before the season, I didn't like the way they put it together. Love the Dansby Swanson signing. Corey Bellinger turned out to be a good signing, so it'll be interesting to see if they can keep him. Marcus Stroman was a good signing, but the pitching was so thin, and still is, and thinner than it was. I just didn't think it was well put together. So I think David Ross deserves some kudos for doing a great job. Jeffrey's a lifelong Cubs fan, and he lives an hour from Cleveland. So you suffered for a long time. Interesting, you live an hour from Cleveland. And so 2016 must have been an interesting, and I don't know whether you have again, I'm not big on secondary allegiances to teams. I root for my teams, and other than that, I root for stories, right? Or where my money is in certain sports. But I'm wondering if being so close to Cleveland, you had any allegiances to them. So 2016 obviously was a great year for you, finally winning a World Series. And I'm curious how you feel about the way your team has since then gone kind of downhill. I thought Joe Madden got a bad deal there myself. But I will tell you, I think they've got a good manager there now. David Ross he was a classy player, not a great player, obviously. Good handler of pitchers, smart baseball instincts, and I think he's a good guy for the Cubs to have there. And I wish you luck. Even though I pick against them, I wish you luck. And they do have Kyle Hendricks, a seasoned veteran and maybe the best pitcher left on that staff right now. What other games tonight? Cincinnati's got Brandon Williamson against Jake Woodford for the Cardinals. That game still has some meaning. The Astros in Arizona, as I said, a huge matchup and a good matchup of pitchers tonight in JP France and Zach Gallen. So this will be an interesting matchup. And then, of course, the other big heavyweight matchup of the night, Texas and Seattle. May have to stay up and watch some of this, although I got to get to the airport tomorrow morning about 5 a.m. So not sure how much of this I'll see, but I'll try to watch some of it. Nathan Eovaldi against Brian Wu for Seattle. Lots of repercussions from that game and from the other games we just brought up the matchups from. There's no reason why they shouldn't have won in 15 or 17. There was a couple of years they could have won. I'm curious, and again, we'll get away from, and I do this from time to time when we get, especially we have a new guest, like a new follower like yourself, Jeffrey, and I hope you will follow TGI Sports Talk and like and follow the page and share the show. Invite your friends. We talk baseball every Friday. We talk everything on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness. If you're a college football fan, we've got the College Football Huddle on Wednesday nights, and we've got some stuff in between as well. And you can catch me all over the dial on different shows at different times. I am curious because I want to switch gears just a little bit since we're talking about the Cubs and being a Cubs fan for a long time. I don't want to guess your age or anything, but it was a long time, obviously, for 2016. We all know the Cubs hadn't won since, I think, 2018. Or I'm sorry, 1918, I should say. Not really sure if that number's right, but I'm curious which close calls hurt. Oh, frankly speaking, sports. You know Larry Frank. Larry's a good guy. I've been on Larry's show a few times, and we've collaborated on some things. I loved Larry's stuff. Doing a great job over there. 1908. Thank you for that. I knew it had an 8 in there somewhere. So I'm curious, Jeffrey, as a Cubs fan, which year hurt the most when they didn't win? So I go back in my lifetime. I'm 63 years old. In my lifetime, 69 obviously would have to be a heartbreaker with the Mets. 80. Well, obviously we had 84 where they lost to the Padres after having a 2-0 lead in a 5-game series. You had a team that was really good under Don Zimmer. I want to say in 87, maybe. That might have been actually 89, I believe that team was 89. And then you had obviously the what the hell's the kid's name who bobbled the ball? The 2006 team with Dusty Baker and a great pitching staff with Kerry Wood and some others. Really a good team. Which one of these years hurts the worst for a Cubs fan? 2003 or 84? 2003. I'm trying to remember what happened was 2003. Maybe that was the what the hell was the guy's name? You got to remember. Man, I can't think of his name. I would think 84 was tough. And I remember kind of being just rooting as a baseball fan, being a Yankee fan. I didn't have anything to root for in 1984, as you likely know. But rooting for pulling for the Padres a little bit. Sorry, Jeffrey. Only because Greg Nettles and Goose Gossage were on that team and they were former Yankees. Bartman, thank you. Goof Bartman. If you haven't watched the 30 for 30 about this game and this situation, you have to watch it. This, again, the guy shouldn't be reaching, but if you notice it, there's about 8 people reaching there with him. And, Moises Alou points to Bartman, and that's it. Do you suppose he's still living in Chicago, or is he like in hiding somewhere, Jeffrey? Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. What else? Listen, I'll ask you about so another thing I want to ask you about. So they've had some really interesting managers in Chicago over the years, from Leo DeRocher to Herman Franks to I'm probably impressing you with my knowledge of the Cubs manager, Gene Michael, Dallas Green. I don't know, Dallas Green managed him. I think he did. Jim Fry, Don Zimmer, Joe Madden, David Ross. Now, who's your favorite manager of all those guys, Jeffrey? And we're going to move on to some other stuff. But I'm just curious. I like to get some knowledge from people. And I'm glad you're following us from Frankly Speaking Sports, and I hope you'll like and follow TGI Sports Talk and maybe invite your friends there too, because we like to put out some good content. Larry does some great stuff as well. I can't get over the top. I can when my buttons are pushed, but Larry, I can't. If I try to match Larry's energy level, I'd probably hurt myself. But Larry does some great stuff. You would pick Madden. Oops, can't find my mouse. Madden or Zimmer would be your picks. Zimmer did a great job there. Great job. How about your worst manager, Jeffrey? You and I are going to have a running conversation here. Oh, my God. You bring that up. I'm going to talk about some other stuff going on around baseball because I want to get into the idiot Kurt Schilling here. So tell me your least favorite manager and maybe why. If I was a Cubs fan, I think my worst favorite manager would be Leo DeRocher because he had great teams and he ran those guys into the ground. I forgot about Lou Piniella managing there. So, now I got to ask you why, because Sweet Lou's one of my guys. Former Yankee, managed the Yankees like everybody managed them a couple of times. I might be the only guy alive who hasn't managed the Yankees a couple of times. You and I, Jeffrey. So I'm curious why you don't like Sweet Lou. They didn't win under Lou. I know that. At least enough. But Lou's And maybe that's why. Lou's a very polarizing figure, man. Lou's had some health issues recently, and I hope he's doing well, by the way. Just never been a fan of Lou Piniella. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think, again, as I said, I think Lou's a very polarizing guy, both as a player and then probably more so, obviously, as a manager. Great job with the Reds. Great job with Seattle. Never won only one World Series, Lou Piniella, with some really good teams. So I guess you could hold that against him. He had some good teams in Cincinnati, did win a World Series, probably the most surprising World Series that he won. Had some really good teams in Seattle, and we know what happened with the team that won the most in the history of baseball in the regular season, as they imploded against the Yankees in the playoffs. And then went to Tampa Bay. It never worked out there. And then on to Chicago, which was his last gig. Had some talent there. Had some guys he didn't get along with. I seem to remember he did not get along with Carlos Zambrano very well. And that's a type of personality clash that kind of hurt Piniella, I think, during his career. So anyway, enough about the Cubs. I can't believe I'm talking as much about the Cubs. Not that there's anything wrong with that, Jeffrey. So what else is going on in the news around Major League Baseball? Let's take a quick look around some stories maybe we didn't touch on. I guess if this is something that interests people, Angels Ohtani finishes with a top-selling jersey. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with Ohtani in the offseason. He said he will not pitch next year. He'll only hit, and when he'll be able to hit might be up in the air. Remember, Bryce Harper had the same injury. He won't have the same surgery quite. And Bryce Harper came back, at least a month, maybe 2 months sooner than people thought he would. So be interesting what happens there. Miguel Cabrera will be retiring. The Tigers announced Friday that the 12-time All-Star will begin a new role with the team as a special assistant to the president of baseball operations. That doesn't sound like that's going to be much for Miggy to do there. I didn't think Miggy still. I thought Miggy had not quite decided whether to come back next year, but apparently I fell asleep on that and he did. Neris, if I say his name right, Hector Neris from the Astros apologized to Julio Rodriguez for going after him the other night. If you saw that video, he came in pretty tight on Julio Rodriguez a couple of times. And then when you struck him out, he shouted at Julio Rodriguez, and they nearly got into it was just one of those baseball pushing and shoving matches. But he was a little tired of some of J-Rod's antics, I think, on home runs. It's a lot of pitchers probably are. Listen, you can do all that stuff and you can do all that bat flipping if you want, but it comes at a risk. There are consequences to your actions. If you don't want to get thrown at, then do not show up pitchers after you hit home runs. Hitting home runs is showing up a pitcher enough. You don't need the bat flips and everything else. I mean, geez, good grief. The Orioles in Maryland agreed to a 30-year deal to keep them at Camden Yards. There was some talk about them possibly looking for a new home in the same area, but looking for a new home. So good for them staying home. And again, congratulations to everybody here. I think we're going to do some grading of the teams. I think next what we'll do is when I'm back from vacation 2 Fridays from now, we'll have our own Drew Ehrlich in. Drew's not with us today, it doesn't look like. And we'll do our own grading of all the major league teams and talk some playoffs and maybe postseason awards and things like that. So we'll have Drew in for a couple of shows after that. Gosh, let me see what kind of news we have here. I got to tell you, if you didn't see, I wish I could find the Bryce Harper video real quick, and I can't. Because is there any worse base? Has there ever been a worse umpire in Major League Baseball than Angel Hernandez? And there's ever been one who this bad who could keep his job for so long? I know everybody's got their umpires that they just can't stand. Joe West, who I thought was a really good umpire, has had a lot of vitriol thrown at him. Doug Harvey back in the day, great managers. Can't get it out of my head. I want to talk about managers in a little bit, but you usually don't keep your job if you're that bad for this long. Angel Hernandez has been doing this for a decade or better. Awful, man. So Bryce Harper gets thrown out of that game. Major League Baseball is looking into that Neris Rodriguez thing. As I said, by the way, Neris did throw an anti-gay slur at J-Rod, which really, listen, there's no need for any of that stuff. Brooks Robinson. I forgot. I'd be remiss if I didn't give a rest in peace to the great Brooks Robinson. In my lifetime, and I'm sure probably in anybody's lifetime, there's been no fielder, third baseman, maybe no fielder in baseball quite as good as Brooks Robinson. My guy, Greg Nettles, lost out on at least a handful of Gold Gloves because of playing in the same era, more or less, as Brooks. And maybe a bit overrated overall at third base because the glove was so good. He did have a handful of really good offensive years, but he wasn't a tremendous offensive player. I think for the time he was a good offensive player. We have to remember, adjust our perspective, how the game was played then as compared to how it's played now. But the man was classy. The man was a gamer. The guy stood by Frank Robinson. People don't really realize this, that Brooks Robinson stood by Frank Robinson when he got traded from Cincinnati to Baltimore. And Baltimore at the time, we're talking about Mason Dixon line here. And Frank Robinson was not greeted with open arms in Baltimore in 1966. And Brooks Robinson stood side by side, literally with his arm around him, saying, "This is my teammate. And this is one of the great players in the game, and you people need to embrace what he will bring to this team." And sure enough, Frank went out and won a Triple Crown in 1966, the AL MVP, and the Orioles won their first World Series, first of a few. And certainly performed well in the city of Baltimore for the next 5 or 6 years. But Brooks was classy all the way, great player, great person. Hall of Fame player, Hall of Fame person, I like to say. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the Brooks Robinson's family, and we hope Brooks is resting peacefully. So I didn't want to forget that news. I almost missed that. Let's see. I might wrap it up a little early here today, but I want to go through some managers real quick, and we'll talk about this a few more times probably before we're done. But there's a few managers who are kind of in limbo for different reasons, right? So we got a little status check of who should be comfortable and who shouldn't. We got guys who are only signed through 2023. Dusty Baker could get dismissed. The general manager that signed him is not here anymore. Dusty is a great manager. I like Dusty. I think Dusty gotten a bad rap through his career, and I think Dusty will be okay if he wants to come back. If the the Astros implode this weekend, that could change. But I think if Dusty wants to be back, if they make the playoffs, it'll be Dusty's choice. But he has no contract for next year. Let's not forget. Craig Counsell done a great job in his tenure with the Brewers. Probably moving on by all reports. He will not be staying and re-upping with the Brewers as his contract is expiring this year. He's going to the playoffs. A lot of different positions and a lot of other jobs may hinge on what Craig Counsell decides to do. A, stay in Milwaukee, which looks like the least likely to happen. Take a year off, which was looking very likely, or go somewhere else, which now is starting to pick up some steam, because as he's made his, privately anyway, his intentions known, a lot of teams are going to kick the tires on Craig Counsell, including the Mets, I would think, since David Stearns is his former boss and the man who hired him in Milwaukee, will now be the head guy in New York. Maybe even the Yankees kick the tires on Counsell. I'm not sure. We'll see. There'll be no lack of interest in him for sure. Phil Nevin has done a great job. He got the interim job last year after Joe Madden got fired. It's not Phil Nevin. Phil Nevin's a good baseball man. Phil Nevin, I'll never forgive Aaron Boone for throwing Phil Nevin under the bus a few years back to keep his job. He had to fire several coaches or walk himself. And, whatever. I don't think he's done that bad, considering the injuries to Ohtani, the injuries to Trout. Ohtani hasn't been quite the same pitcher that he was the last few years. He's certainly a great hitter still. Anthony Rendon has been hurt forever and not performed as well as he should before that. This team is very poorly put together. I find it hard to believe, though, that Artie Moreno is going to bring him back. Torey Lovullo with the Diamondbacks, interesting. No contract extension brought up too much during the course of this year. He took over a team that lost 110. I mean, this is a team he didn't take over. They kept him after losing 110 games 2 years ago. And this team's gotten better and better. I thought they were a year away. It looks like they may be a year ahead of that schedule. So I think that Torey Lovullo will likely either get a big contract extension here, or he's going to be an interesting major league manager free agent, which we don't often see. David Bell, another great story in Cincinnati, also without a contract for next year. He's done this with one of the lowest payrolls in baseball, got them to a winning record, and still in the wild card race, at least until tonight. So we don't know where David Bell's going to end up. Are they going to pay him what a manager of his perceived value would be worth? Don't know. Davey Martinez with the Nationals. This is an interesting situation because he went from managing a team that was all in to win for a few years. Did win a World Series, if you remember, in 2017, I want to say. And I don't know, possibly, maybe he's set there for life if he wants to stay. But if they have a new ownership team come in, all bets are off. This ownership team were to stay, then he might be the manager for life. But him and Mike Russo are both probably up in the air, because if this team sells, then usually that kind of stuff sweeps itself clean. Managers that are under contract beyond 2023. Buck Showalter. I think Buck deserves to come back. I think Buck's fate probably hinges on what Craig Counsell does. I really do, because of the Stearns connection. The Mets may fire him anyway. If Counsell's going to sit out a year, I think it's pretty likely that Buck will be back. But then if they do that, the Mets put themselves in jeopardy of Buck doing well. And then what are they going to do? They can't fire him to hire Counsell. So my guess is, and they can't hire somebody else. They can't fire Buck and hire somebody else and fire him. I don't think after 1 year they could. I don't see the Mets being bad enough to warrant firing a first-year manager. It's happened before, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I think you'll see the Mets probably go all in and try to get Counsell to become a manager now and not sit out that year is what I think we'll see. Bob Melvin, really good manager. Teams underperformed. They played really well recently. They've won at a better rate recently. They'll probably finish at 500 or a little better. They won't quite make the playoffs. Bob Melvin did a great job in Oakland. This team, again, put together without any thought to chemistry or anything like that. By all accounts, Melvin does not have a good relationship with AJ Preller, the GM, which I think it's pretty possible they're going to move on. But the interesting part of this is that if he were to fire or Melvin were to walk, Preller will have gone through, since 2014, Bud Black, Pat Murphy, Andy Green, Jace Tingler, and now Melvin as managers. General managers don't normally get a chance to hire and fire that many guys. So maybe Preller takes a fall here, but he's a favorite of the ownership. So Oli Marmol, who the Cards have loved, he did a great job with his team last year. His team went in the tank this year. I find it hard to blame Marmol for that. I do think he'll probably be retained. He's only been there 2 years. This year, I don't think you can blame on him. The pitchers all either got old or got hurt or ineffective all at once, except for maybe Jordan Montgomery. And some of the hitters stopped hitting. So I think they'll retool this team, and I think Marmol would be back. Aaron Boone, I really thought he was going to be gone. I think the fight the Yankees have shown down the stretch will probably see him get retained. I think it's time to move on. I think it's time to get a new voice in there. But the problem is I do believe he's connected at the hip with Cashman, and Cashman's not losing his job. So it's unlikely. He signed through 24 with a club option for 25. I think he's going to get one more chance here with the Yankees, and I'm not crazy about that, by the way. Alex Cora, they brought him back. Remember, he was suspended. He won a World Series with the A's, and they fired him when he was brought up in the scandal that was the Astros sign stealing escapade. Most overrated thing in the history of baseball, in my mind. Question's going to be, I think he's going to be back. He's kept this team, a bad team, I thought, afloat for a lot longer than a lot of guys would have. He's well respected within the industry. He'd probably have a job in a heartbeat if they did let him go, but I do think he'll be back. Gabe Kapler, a different situation in San Francisco. He's another polarizing figure. He does things a lot different than other guys. Giants, he kept a mediocre Giant team at best in the race here. Kind of late in the season, they fell apart, but he did keep him in the race for a long time. Had a 107-win season just 2 seasons ago. My gut says that Kapler will stay. David Ross, we just talked about with Jeffrey, our Cubs fan, and I don't think he should not be in trouble, but I think it's possible he is in trouble because the Cubs are so fickle. But he does continue to get support from Jed Hoyer, the president of baseball operations. The Cubs. This is a Cubs team that had no business competing this year, and David Ross has done a great job with again a very mediocre roster. Rocco Baldelli should not have a problem, I don't believe. Scott Surveys, who I thought was in trouble early in the year with a horrible start that the Mariners had, righted the ship, made a run, faded at the end. He's in the second year of a contract extension of undisclosed length, probably depending on what they'd have to pay him to walk away. Now, he does have a pretty good reputation with Jerry DiPato, the GM or baseball operations president. which will help him. I think he probably stays. Bud Black with the Rockies. Listen, Bud Black's a good manager, but how long? He's 65 years old. This organization is going nowhere. And if I'm Bud Black, I'm walking away from my contract. And, of course, Terry Francona in his own category. Terry's walking away of his own volition. I thought he would have done it last year, and maybe it would have been best for him if he did. He had a lot of health problems the last few years. This year, maybe more than even the others. But I think he will. He is walking away. We know that. So, going to be some changes. Craig Counsell could be the linchpin for a lot of movement around baseball. Bob Melvin, too. Just keep that in mind. So, anyway, lots of great baseball this weekend, guys. Oh, Curt Schilling, by the way. Curt Schilling, shut up. I have to agree with Jason Varitek's wife, who tweeted out, Curt Schilling, F you. If you don't know, Curt Schilling let out some personal medical issues that Tim Wakefield and his wife are both going through, very serious medical issues, which I will not get into out of respect to them. That's what they wanted. They wanted it kept quiet. Curt Schilling goes on his podcast yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever it was, and announces to the world what both of them are going through in this. And it's a tough time for them, and they wanted to deal with it in private, and he airs their stuff out there. Not your place to do, Curt. You are still a self-serving SOB, just like you were when you played. You know, the whole bloody sock and the ketchup in your sock and whatever the hell was going on that night. You know, the great, heroic Curt Schilling. The woe is me Curt Schilling, that I'm not being considered for the Hall of Fame because of my political views. Listen, I probably share a lot of the same political views as Curt Schilling, and I'm not proud that he's part of my flock, I can tell you right now, because this is, to me, just a despicable human being, and this is just the latest example of it. So anyway, I'll leave you with that. Watch the games tonight. Great baseball tonight. Great series. Astros and Diamondbacks. The Rangers and the Mariners. The Marlins will be playing, I think, who do we say they're playing? Pittsburgh. Great races. American League West, American League Wild Card, National League Wild Card. May go right down to Sunday. Might go all the way to Monday afternoon with a half inning of baseball being played, guys. Who can really tell? This is the type of season that it's been. This is the type of season we can probably expect to finish out the same way. So enjoy your day. Ethan Engel, TGI Sports Talk, MLB update. Have a great weekend, guys. I'm on vacation, but you'll hear from me at some point next week with this show and all my shows at some point next week. So have a great, great, great weekend. We'll keep you abreast of